The chamber echoed with the low hum of 1,000 voices deliberating the fate of a single planet. Overhead, crystalline displays streamed real-time data across alien languages, some flickering in glyphs, others in pulses of color and rhythm. In the center, suspended in gravity-neutral stasis, a hologram of a world rotated slowly. Deep blue continents scarred by canyons, seas choked with chemical fog, and lightning storms riding like serpents across its stratosphere. Virex 9, a class O Deathworld. Humans, hissed High Chancellor Vrel for the E3 Dominion, her voice like dry leaves rasping across metal. They claim resilience. Let them prove it. The vote passed by a narrow margin, not out of confidence, but curiosity. Humans had survived their own wars, poisoned atmospheres, even near-extinction events. The consortium needed data. What better test than the most hostile world charted to date? 2 weeks later, a modest human task force departed from Lunar Station Perseus. Captain Elena Sato stood at the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, arms crossed, gaze locked on the swirling vortex that marked the edge of the wormhole. She had been chosen not just for her strategic brilliance, but for her unyielding refusal to let her species be treated like pawns. Behind her, Lieutenant Marcus Dahl checked vitals for the drop team, his mouth tight with suppressed frustration. "They think we're expendable," he muttered. Elena didn't turn. Good. Expendable soldiers have nothing to prove, just everything to win. The wormhole folded around them like a clenched fist. Virex 9 sky bled electric blue when they emerged. Lightning split the clouds like vengeful gods in mid-duel. From orbit, the planet looked deceptively lifeless. But scanners told another story. Massive energy signatures, thermal blooms across the northern quadrant, and strange distortions in gravitational fields. By the time their dropships entered atmosphere, the craft was buffeted by currents strong enough to shear steel. One pod, Delta 5, disintegrated mid-descent, its wreckage vaporized by a ground-level plasma surge. No time for grief, no room for error. They landed in a basin surrounded by blackened cliffs and towering crystalline structures that pulsed faintly with energy. The air reeked of ozone and decay. Biologist Dr. Yusuf Andari stepped out first, scanning the soil with handheld analyzers. The ground's alive, not metaphorically. It's biomechanically active. This whole valley is some kind of nerve cluster. Marcus chuckled dryly. Well, that's comforting. The base took shape over 3 days. Modular habdomes reinforced with adaptable nanoalloys, perimeter sensors armed with pulse disruptors, and a centralized command post nestled into a rock shelf that gave them partial cover from above. The team worked in shifts, rarely speaking unless necessary. Fatigue came fast and sleep came hard. Elena kept a private journal during the nights when Virex 9's twin moons turned the sky an eerie violet. "We're not guests here," she wrote. "We're intruders in a body that's trying to reject us." The first death came on day 6. Corporal Rami Thorne was patrolling the northern ridge when he disappeared from the drone feed. By the time the team arrived, there was no body, just a shallow crater, heat-scarred rock, and traces of iridescent residue. No footprints, no blood. Security protocols were raised, but morale dropped. The alien observers, hundreds of kilometers above in an orbiting dreadnought cloaked from human sensors, watched in fascination. 3 tall figures, exoskeletal and statuesque, stood before a panoramic observation window. Their eyes glowed faintly, feeding data to a neural hive net. Already one lost. One of them murmured in their native frequency, "Soft flesh never endures." Another responded, "But they adapt." Watch. The infection of human persistence is never immediate. It metastasizes. By day 10, the humans were no longer just surviving. They were analyzing, adjusting. Dr. Andari discovered a biochemical enzyme in the air that accelerated cell repair in short bursts, a naturally occurring adaptation in local flora. Synthesized correctly, it could increase human resistance to toxins. They called it V9 cytolase, and within days, medics were using it in field injections. Weather systems grew more erratic. Thunderstorms raged without warning, and plasma bolts licked across the ground like intelligent fire. Yet, with every storm survived, the humans grew more confident. Elena revised their patrols, repositioned the energy barriers, and instructed engineers to build lightning sinks using conductive ores embedded in cliff veins. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Still, the tension never left. At night, strange sounds echoed from beyond the perimeter. Clicking, whispering vibrations, sometimes a distant rhythmic thudding, like the heartbeat of something buried deep below. Elena began dreaming in symbols she didn't understand. So did others. Patterns that felt old, predatory, and aware. On the 13th day, a creature breached the southern line. It came from beneath the soil, a segmented mass of armor and tendon, eyes like molten obsidian, a mouth with spiraling rows of retractable teeth. Sergeant Kellerman died first, impaled through the chest. But the rest of the squad responded with precision. Stun pulses to the joints, thermal charges at the base, and a final volley from an antimatter carbine. When it fell, it didn't scream. It sang, a low, harmonic tone that made blood vessels shiver. They dissected the corpse in silence. Its brain was crystalline. Its circulatory system fed not blood, but a light-conducting fluid. Virex, 9 had evolved life. It had forged it. From orbit, the alien observers leaned closer. Impossible, whispered one. No known species neutralized a tunneler before. Their pain sharpens them, said another. That is their weapon. News of the encounter was relayed to Earth. The consortium released a heavily redacted summary, human adaptation proceeding within statistical norms. But leaked footage told a different story. It spread across underground networks, stirring conversations on 20 different worlds. If humans can survive Virex, 9, what else can they survive? Captain Elena stood alone that evening on the observation deck, staring out across the jagged horizon. Lightning forked down again, striking one of the natural spires in the distance. The entire valley glowed faintly, like a nerve responding to pain. Her reflection in the glass was gaunt, sleepless, but unbroken. We're still here, she said aloud, to no one. They sent us to die, but this planet's teaching us something they didn't expect. Behind her, Marcus approached, his voice quiet. You really think we're going to make it? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she placed a hand on the pane, feeling the faint vibration of the storm through the structure. I don't think we were ever supposed to survive, she said finally. But we are, and if this world is a test. She turned toward him, eyes like tempered steel. Then we're going to be the ones grading them when it's over. Outside, the storm howled on. Virex, 9 did not rest, and neither did the humans. The planet challenged them with every breath, every tremor in the earth, every bolt of skyfire that clawed from the clouds. But the team had moved beyond fear. They no longer waited for the next catastrophe. They anticipated it. Lieutenant Marcus Dahl stood over a field table, data streaming across its surface in flickering holographics. Another pulse shift in the southern hemisphere. Seismic irregularities repeating every 8 hours, 32 minutes. Could be tectonic. Could be something else. Captain Elena Sato glanced at him as she zipped up her insulated jacket. Scarred from last night's storm. Could be the planet breathing. She wasn't joking. Dr. Yusuf Indari's latest scans showed layers of what could only be described as vascular tunnels beneath the crust, as if the planet's geology had mimicked organic structure. It wasn't just alive in the microbial sense. It had systemic architecture, purpose, intention. They adapted quickly. Air scrubbers were recalibrated to filter not just toxins, but airborne spore clouds that occasionally swept in like drifting fog. Base drones were reprogrammed to operate autonomously when signal interference spiked, which happened more often than it didn't. Engineers began welding lightning rods to natural spires, transforming hazards into early warning systems. But what truly astonished the team and the unseen alien observers was how humans turned adversity into ingenuity. Sergeant Dana Volkov had lost 2 fingers during the tunneler attack. Instead of waiting for recovery, she built her own prosthetics using scavenged materials from the creature's remains and printed alloys. Within 2 days, she was back on patrol. Her new fingers could crush steel. You're becoming part of this place, Elena noted as they inspected the perimeter. Volkov smiled without warmth. No, I'm making this place part of me. 100 kilometers above, In the orbiting dreadnought, the aliens observed in silence. The three overseers, ancient beings engineered for analytical perfection, conferred through silent pulses of electromagnetic thought. A fourth figure joined them, his silhouette taller, armored differently. "Your experiment is becoming contamination," the newcomer said without emotion. "They were supposed to die. They're instead assimilating." "They are still within parameters," one of the original trio replied. "We underestimated their neuroadaptive threshold. It will peak soon, then collapse. You mistake survival for ascendancy." Back on the surface, the humans weren't waiting for ascension. They were building. The outpost had grown into a fortress. Hardened alloy sheets, reinforced towers, underground shelters. Power conduits now drew energy directly from the planet's magnetic anomalies. Volkov even theorized they could reverse certain plasma surges and repurpose them as shields. When another tunneler emerged, larger, faster, Elena made the call to engage rather than defend. Marcus led the squad, using bait drones to lure the beast into a narrow canyon. Thermite charges did the rest. It wasn't just a victory. It was a statement. Elena reviewed the footage in the command post with narrowed eyes. "They're not hunting us anymore. They're reacting. They're learning from us." Yusef disagreed. "They're being directed. You said it yourself. This planet's a system. These aren't wild animals. They're responses." That night, the dreams returned. Elena saw circuits bleeding into roots, thunder crawling like insects across skin. Voices, inhuman but familiar, whisper her name. When she awoke, her bedsheet was damp with sweat, and her fingertips were glowing faintly. She washed the light away with alcohol, saying nothing. The next day, during a routine patrol, they discovered a structure, half buried in obsidian glass. It was unmistakably artificial, ancient, symmetrical, humming faintly with residual energy. The entrance was sealed, but not broken. Elena sent in a probe. It lasted 6 minutes before transmission cut. "What's in there?" Marcus asked. "Answers," she said, "or warnings." They returned to camp to regroup and prepare, but not before placing motion sensors and portable sentry turrets around the site. That night, the skies turned gold. Not dawn, not dusk, gold, like the sun had slipped behind the wrong horizon. Thunder cracked sideways, echoing for minutes. And from the ridge above the camp, a new shape watched them, tall, multi-limbed, still. The team mobilized in under 30 seconds. Weapons ready, formation tight, but the figure made no move. Then, slowly, it stepped back into the mist and vanished. "It didn't attack," Volkov noted, wiping sweat from her brow. "Why show itself at all?" "Message," Elena said. "We're not alone down here. And whatever else survived, it remembers." The following morning, the air pressure dropped by 12%. Rain fell in metallic sheets that stung exposed skin. Communications went dark. But no one panicked. They moved by protocol, by instinct, by a rhythm forged from shared struggle. In orbit, the observers could no longer maintain consensus. The humans have stabilized. That should be impossible. Virex, 9 is not survivable. It rejects foreign life. It did, until now. You imply they've bonded with the ecosystem? No, the taller figure corrected. They've dominated it, bent it to human logic. They are not coexisting. They are colonizing. The decision to end the experiment was raised for the first time. Back on the surface, Yusef analyzed new samples retrieved from a fissure near the buried structure. The material didn't match any known substance, organic yet crystalline, able to absorb and store energy far beyond any human battery tech. This wasn't natural, he whispered to himself. This was built, a power source, maybe, or an interface. Before he could continue, an alarm blared. Perimeter breach. The figure from the ridge had returned. This time not alone. A dozen others moved with it, bodies fluid and spiked, eyes burning like coals. They didn't attack immediately. They circled, inspecting the camp's defenses, studying. Elena ordered a ceasefire. Not until they strike first. We need to know what they are. They're not animals, Marcus said. They're scouts. intelligent. The standoff lasted 3 hours. Then the figures simply walked away. Later that evening, Elena stood atop the forward tower, eyes scanning the horizon as dust storms churned on the edge of visibility. Marcus joined her, offering a ration bar. "You think they're part of the planet?" he asked. "No," she said quietly. "I think they were like us. Once." It wasn't a theory she voiced often, but one that haunted her more each day. That Virex, 9 wasn't just a testing ground. It was a tomb, and the things walking in its storms weren't wild. They were remnants, warnings, echoes of a civilization that tried to control the uncontrollable. But humans had never followed blueprints. They improvised, they adapted, they endured. That night, Elena updated her journal for the first time in days. We're no longer just survivors. We're becoming natives, not in culture, but in consequence. Whatever this planet holds, it's waking up, and it's watching how we answer. Above, the dreadnought systems detected a shift. Something deep within the planet, below the buried structure, was generating a pulse. Not a warning, not a distress call, a beacon. Elena didn't sleep. The next phase had begun. The ground beneath the forward outpost trembled, slowly at first, like a restless breath, then with the deep resonance of something ancient stirring from slumber. Lights flickered across the base as the tremor subsided, leaving a silence that felt deliberate, as if the planet were listening for a response. Captain Elena Sato stood at the center of the command hub, her jaw tense as she studied the seismic readings. The pulse had repeated for the 3rd time in 48 hours, each wave stronger, more structured, not natural, not random, rhythmic. "It's communication," Dr. Andari said, voice hoarse with revelation. "The pulses follow the Fibonacci sequence. It's not a signal, it's a language." Marcus leaned against the data console, arms folded, eyes narrowed. Then who or what is speaking? They didn't yet know, but something beneath the surface had awakened, and the buried structure they discovered days ago, half submerged in obsidian and whispering with dormant energy, had begun to respond. The humming had grown louder, now audible without amplification, low, constant, and undeniably alive. Volkov, ever pragmatic, outfitted her recon unit with adaptive armor and energy suppression cloaks. The team descended into the fissure that led to the structure's outer shell, setting up a research station just outside its entry point. The surface was smooth now, strangely clean, as if the planet itself had sloughed off the layers of time that had concealed it. Yusef ran his fingers over the strange glyphs that adorned the doorframe. "It's not just technology. It's neural. This thing, it thinks." They initiated contact, not with words, but with patterns. Elena authorized a pulse mimicry using their own signal infrastructure. Nothing dramatic, just a soft reply in the same sequence. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. The door opened. A hiss escaped as pressure equalized. Mist poured from the opening, cool and strangely aromatic. What lay beyond was a chamber not of metal or stone, but woven filaments. Light and structure fused together in harmony. The walls shifted subtly like they breathed. Elena led the team in, every step an act of defiance against their own fear. Inside, the chamber responded to their presence. Lights ignited as they passed, pulsing in sync with heart rates, stress levels, neural activity. Elena paused as a spiral of symbols flickered along the far wall, forming a cascade that shifted from alien glyphs into crude, blocky letters. Observer recognized. Protocol 7 initiated. "What the hell is Protocol 7? Marcus muttered. "I think we're about to find out," Elena said, staring at the wall as more text appeared. Intrusion accepted. Adaptation engaged. Test restructured. Volkov stiffened. "They've changed the rules." Back at the surface, a cascade of anomalies unfolded in real time. Atmospheric pressure dropped sharply. Clouds formed in geometric patterns. Creatures once thought dormant began migrating en masse, moving in a spiral path around the base's coordinates. It wasn't a coincidence. It was choreography. From orbit, the alien overseers watched in mounting unease. What had begun as a controlled experiment had shifted out of bounds. One observer pulsed a direct communication, into the Dreadnought's core systems. They've entered the relay chamber, the planet's central processing node. They were never meant to find it. They were meant to be measured, another replied. But they become variables. Then control must be reasserted. A decision was made. The cloaked ship in orbit activated its suppression grid, a web of energy designed to destabilize planetary anomalies and disorient biological entities. Within seconds, chaos rippled to the surface. Power failures, drone malfunctions, shield collapses. Elena's team felt it instantly. The chamber shook. Lights dimmed. The neural filaments trembled like wounded nerves. External interference, Yusef shouted. We're being jammed. Elena gritted her teeth. They're trying to shut us out, or shut this down. But the chamber reacted, not in defense, but in defiance. A wave of energy erupted outward, knocking all equipment offline, except the chamber's internal systems, which now pulsed faster, angrier. Disruption detected. Aggression confirmed. Protocol 7 escalated. Outside, the planet itself responded. Storm fronts surged in like tidal waves. Lightning danced along the sky's edge in unnatural fractals. The creatures that had once stalked the base now stood still, unmoving, then began to dig. All across the valley, they unearthed more structures, previously hidden beneath layers of volcanic ash and sediment. Yusef stumbled backward from the console. We're not the first. There were others. This whole world is a memory palace. Whose memory? Marcus asked. Elena already knew the answer. The ones who built this. The ones who failed. The door behind them sealed. The chamber pulsed red, then violet. A figure emerged, not a being, but a projection. Tall, faceless, humanoid in silhouette, and composed entirely of golden latticework. It did not speak. It simply broadcast. Images surged into their minds. Star systems unraveling. A civilization of architects and thinkers forging a planet not to live on, but to store their legacy. A living archive. Then came invaders. Fire. Collapse. Isolation. The memory cut off abruptly. I think it's choosing, Elena whispered. It's been waiting for someone who could understand. Volkov shook her head. Or someone desperate enough to listen. The structure began to shift again. Platforms descended, revealing relics, tools, weapons, devices, each one attuned to their biology. Not gifts, not trophies, keys. Above, the suppression grid intensified, but it was too late. Virex 9 was awake, and it had chosen its new stewards. Elena placed her hand on the final pedestal. The ground trembled once more, but this time it felt different, not chaotic, but aligned. Marcus spoke first. If we take this, there's no going back. No, Elena said, but maybe there was never a back to begin with. The relic pulsed beneath her fingers. Far above, the dreadnought sensors overloaded. The grid collapsed. Power failed. For the first time in centuries, the ancient observers felt something alien to them. Fear. On Virex, 9 storm and silence intertwined. The test had evolved. And the humans were no longer subjects. They were successors. The world had changed. Or perhaps it had simply revealed its true shape. In the days that followed the chamber's awakening, Virex, 9 no longer felt hostile. It felt alert, as though the planet were breathing through every storm, every quaking fault line, every flickering aurora stretching across its torn skies. The air shimmered with unseen frequencies. The trees in the distance bent not with the wind, but with intention. Human footsteps no longer left shallow marks in the dirt. They etched resonance, like vibrations added to a symphony already in motion. Captain Elena Sato stood on the observation deck of the newly expanded outpost, staring at the horizon. What had once been a fortress of fear was now something else, half research station, half monument. Their tools were no longer just human. The relics from the chamber had rewritten their interfaces, blending bone and alloy, intention and instinct. Not everyone had embraced them, but those who had now moved differently, more attuned, more precise. Energy output from the core relays increased by another 7%, said Dr. Yusef Indari from the platform behind her. It's like it's evolving, adapting to our presence. Or preparing for something else, Elena replied. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the weight she carried. Command had never been heavier. This wasn't a mission anymore. It was a reckoning. The scouts, what the team had taken to calling the tall, multi-limbed entities, had returned. But this time, they didn't linger in the distance. They approached camp openly, without aggression, weapons lowered. They moved like memories, graceful, cautious, remnants of something older than language. One of them had reached out to Volkov, placing a thin, glowing hand against her armored chest. It had not spoken, but in that moment, the sergeant had fallen to her knees, weeping. They showed me, she whispered later, a war, a loss, not of territory, but of purpose. They weren't guardians. They were witnesses. They've been alone here, watching us repeat their mistakes. The central conflict was no longer between human survival and planetary hostility. It was between comprehension and consequence. Virex 9 wasn't simply testing the limits of endurance. It had been waiting for someone to finish what had been started, not a colonization, a continuation. From orbit, the alien overseers had lost control entirely. The suppression grid was inert, and now the planet's pulsing frequency disrupted even their cloak systems. The dreadnought trembled with unspoken panic. They had watched countless species crumble under Virex's merciless design. None had adapted. None had answered the Chamber's call, except humanity. They should have perished, one of the observers said, its voice little more than static against the growing interference. They transformed instead. They accepted entropy and rewrote it. We were wrong, said the tallest of the three. This was never an extermination test. It was a succession trial. The humans had inherited something none of their predecessors had earned: choice. Marcus Dahl stood at the heart of the relay chamber now, surrounded by fractal pillars of light and data that folded in on themselves like petals. His skin glowed faintly from contact with the relic systems, and though his words were the same, his thoughts moved faster. He understood the chamber now, not fully, but enough to realize its power wasn't just technological. It was cognitive, a neural archive of a civilization that had transferred its entire cultural memory into code, not to preserve it, but to offer it. It wants us to remember, he told Elena. Not just facts, emotions, experience, the feeling of reaching too far and paying the price. Yusuf stepped forward, hesitant. So, what do we do with that memory? We make something better. The team voted. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. The relics, the knowledge, the planetary pulse. They would not be hoarded, not brought back to Earth for war or profit. Instead, they would become a seed, a new philosophy, a blend of science and stewardship. The scouts, those strange sentinels, escorted the humans to a second chamber deep in the crust, where bioluminescent trees bloomed in total darkness. They walked through what had once been a city, not of metal, but of idea-made form. The buildings hummed with harmonic intention, designed not for shelter but for clarity. In the center of this forgotten city stood a monolith, shaped like no language but resonant with every mind present. Elena touched it. In an instant, she saw the last days of creators, a society on the brink of transcendence, turning their final hopes inward into the planet itself, a vessel for continuity. They had known others would come, that something sentient and searching would find them, but they had also known that survival was not enough. Growth was the only answer. When Elena withdrew her hand, she turned to the team. We were sent here to measure our limits, but maybe what really matters is how we surpass them together. The outpost became something else. Not a military base, not a research lab, but the first embassy to a forgotten civilization. Communications with Earth resumed weeks later, filtered through modified systems that resisted planetary interference. The message sent was simple. We are not lost. We are not broken. Virex 9 is not a Deathworld. It is a mirror, and we have chosen to remain. The silence that followed from Earth spoke volumes. Above, the dreadnought began its retreat. The observers had seen enough. Humanity had not only survived the trial, they had changed its nature. Virex 9 no longer belonged to the architects of extinction. It belonged to the Inheritors of Failure, who turned it into Foundation. On the surface, Marcus and Volkov worked side by side, shaping a new outpost using alloy grown from Virex itself. Yusef led biointegration studies with the Scouts, recording how their biology had adapted to the neural lattice. Elena walked the perimeter alone at dusk, watching the golden sky ripple with encoded stormlight. The wind no longer screamed. It sang, and in the deep places of the world, the pulse of the chamber continued. Not warning, not threatening, welcoming. The story of Virex, 9 would not be one of annihilation. It would be one of transformation. And those who once thought they were being tested finally understood. They had been chosen.